Hey, welcome back to part 2 of our camera projection tutorial. When we left off, we did some basic geometry, some modeling, and we got our basic projection ready to go. Now we're starting to add some objects. We got to get our lighting together. We got to get the spheres together, so all the dynamics and animation and compositing and all the rest of that stuff to get this final product out here. So let's get in here and let's finish this thing up. So here we are. This is where we left off, and the thing that stands out the most to me is the coloring. You can see the logo on the wall and the sphere on the ground here and all that stuff are white. And if you look at something that is white, like this wall here, you can see it is white, but it's got a lot of blue tint to it, and that has to do with the way the photo is taken. Now, there are a few different ways to approach this. The first way to approach it is to, first of all, color correct the photo before we brought it in. So we could go back to Photoshop and open that photo up and then get the white balance to white. And then we could do our whole scene here with normal lighting, with normal colors, and then when we export it, we could do whatever we want with it. We could tint it back to blue, but basically what we want to do is make sure things match, right? But if we do that, we also have to affect the sky and do all that other stuff. But this is blue for a reason. If you think about it, when you look where the sun's kind of reflecting off these windows here and bouncing in. This is white. And if you look over here where the sun is actually hitting the white paint, it's got even a little warmth to it. So if we think about it in the way that this is taken, this is blue because all it's seeing is the sky. All it's getting its light from is its blue sky. You can even see in the reflection here that it's reflecting a lot of that blue. So instead of color correcting the white and try to fight all this color data, we're actually just going to keep it the way it is and use that 360 image that we shot to light our scene. And when we do that, all these other objects are going to pick up that same blue. So let's set that up. You saw in the first video, I didn't have any of my stuff installed, so we ended up using the sky object to set everything up. So let's replace that with the HDR rig, because that's going to give us a little bit more flexibility to also do some of the blurring and some of that stuff to start to light our scene. So let's just turn off our sky, and if you have the HDR Studio Pack, you'll be able to load up your HDR Studio rig. And then what we want to do is in the rig, instead of our HDR file, we just want our 360 that we built. So we can actually go in here and go to where is it? We saved it. It's under camera calibrate tutorial, and then we have our meat plant 360. And when we open that, we can now jump out of our camera, which I think we are, and fly around. And the first thing we have to do is turn it on scene by camera. So when we turn on scene by camera, now we can rotate around, and now we just need to match it up. Well, there's Chris hanging out. Chris actually took the photo from over here, so we have to make sure that Chris is right behind our camera. So let's just go up and over. There's our cameras, and let's rotate until we see Chris where the cameras are, because he's the one, or actually he's right next to me, but he is in the position where those cameras are. So let's rotate. Now we can just rotate this around, and we can put them right there, which puts our wall over here. It puts our sky here. It puts our building, and it also puts all these other buildings around. You can see our building here. We can see the train tracks. You can see all that stuff. And now, what that is, now basically we're back to where we started. If we turn off scene by camera, or turn off scene by camera, then we're back to what we had with the sky. But now what we have is the ability to tweak and adjust all this stuff in our options instead of going in and adding the compositing tag and doing all that stuff. And the main thing we want to do is blur our luminance texture. And what this is going to do is allow us to use a little bit of GI to light our scene and get that blue. So by blurring our scene, our reflections won't be blurred. So if we zoom into the sphere, the reflections on our scene don't change. We could still see the sky, we could still see the building over there and all that. But what is happening is the texture that we're going to use to light the scene is going to is going to be blurred just a little bit. What that does is it gives you a cleaner render with less flickering, with less little sharp edges, and it gives you the general idea of the lighting. It's the same thing as if we were to go into Photoshop. I'll spare you going in there because this will run long either way. But basically, if we were to blur our luminance texture, we're going to get a smoother render with our lighting when we turn on global illumination. So let's go ahead and do that. Turn on GI, and let's, since we're in 14, we don't have the sky sampler anymore. We actually just have this QMC, which is similar. So if you're used to me using the sky sampler all the time, we're going to do that again. But now it's just named differently, and the way to set it up is a little bit different. But just understand that QMC is the same as Sky Sampler, essentially, for this purpose. So we're going to go QMC. We're going to raise the gamma up so it's not too dark, maybe 2. Our sampling is at medium right now. We could just go to low just to get a basic render. And now, check that out. As soon as we change and put global illumination on, now it's being lit by the scene. So check this out. We have all that blue from the sky and from our surroundings and that 360 that we pulled in, even though it's not an HDR, all that color data is being blasted onto our objects, and we're getting that same blue. There's no new lights in the scene. There's no anything. But by adding that 360 around us, let's turn it on for now just so we could see it. By adding that 360 around us with the blue sky and all that stuff, we're actually getting light on our object that is tinting it the correct color. And in fact, we're even getting a nice little sun strip here. We're getting the reflection off the wall. We're starting to get in to where we're getting more realistic with our shadows and with our lighting. So that did a ton right there. Okay, so now we have our rough lighting kind of roughed in there. From here, what we're going to do is we're going to model the rest of these garage doors here. We have to separate out each garage door so that we can animate each door coming up, right? And then we have to model the little garage compartment where all the spheres fall out of. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's rotate around, and let's do a little bit more grabbing of these polygons here. So let's make sure we have it selected. We're on our plane. So what we want to do first is we want to grab each one of these polygons and then separate it from its existing background, or separate it from its existing model. So if we call this main wall, let's say, okay, we want to separate these 3 objects and get them away from main wall and make separate objects so that we can animate them. So let's just grab one and do one at a time and make 1 garage door, 2 garage door, 3 garage door. So this is the process. You grab the polygon. What you want to do is, I think you want to split it. But again, we're going to go back to my little notes here and pull this up. And I think, split. So the key command for your split is U and then P. So let's pull that up. We have our polygon selected. Let's hit U. And you can see our list comes up here. And P is split. And as soon as we hit P, it has pulled that one polygon off into its own little deal, and it's right below it. But we still have the original polygon selected. So if we were to do nothing right now, we would have a duplicate copy. We would have the original polygon and the whole wall, and then we would have this new one, which is separated, but we still have the original. So while we have this selected, let's just hit delete, and then delete that from our original model. So now what we have is our original wall, and then our, let's grab the move tool here, and then now we have a separated piece that is the garage door. Okay, so from the front, now what we could do is animate this guy going up and down. Well, you can see we have a problem here. When we animate the door going up and down, it's still going up and down, but the texture is not going with it. And that's because the texture is being projected, remember, by this camera. What we set up with that camera calibration tool is basically a camera that is projecting the texture from the exact place where we took the photo. So this is something I didn't mention the first time, but if we grab this camera, this is where the camera was. If we were to go out and figure out where I took that photo, like CSI style or whatever, you can actually calibrate this and go, this is where I was standing when I took this photo. Well, this camera is projecting out the photo that I took into the world. So if you imagine it collected all the data, and then we set up the geometry, and now it's barfing out the data back out into this geometry, and it doesn't know that this garage door is moving. It's just kind of projecting onto it, and as we move the door, it's not sticking. Well, this is how we get it to stick. It's kind of a complicated process, or I guess it's more tedious than complicated. But this is what we have to do. We need this texture to have its own projection. So here's one way we could do it. We could take this object and we could duplicate our camera, which is our projector camera. Okay. We could duplicate the camera and make it a child of our wall. So what this means is when the wall moves, the camera will go along with it. So now we have a duplicate camera that is projecting from out here. When we move the wall up, what it will do once we get rid of this tag is it's going to move up with the wall. So essentially the texture will stick to the door as we move it. Well, here's how we have to set it up, though. It needs its own texture tag that is the projection tag that it originally made when we made that camera. So remember, we put this on the null in part 1, and this is kind of going down through the hierarchy and showing and allowing that projection to hit each object in here. If we were to duplicate this, okay, actually, let's not duplicate it that way. I'm going to drag it and hold down Command, and I'm going to drag it onto this new main wall, which is called, let's say, Garage Door 1. Okay, so Garage Door 1 has this new texture tag, and this new texture tag needs to look at this camera instead of the original one, because by default, it's looking at its original projector camera. Now we want it to look at this one, so we just have to replace this camera with this camera. Boop. Now we have to delete the camera calibration tag because we don't need it. It's already set in space. We just get rid of it. And now what we do is we raise the garage door and check that out. Everything's sticking to it. And in fact, if we pull far out here, you can see the camera raise up and down. So really, it's doing the same thing. It's just we've parented the camera so it sticks to it. And no matter where this garage door goes, the camera follows and projects exactly what that was. Well, we have to do this to all of our garage doors so that we can animate them. So let me just back up here so the door is back to where it was. Okay, and I still think it's moved a little bit. All right, and let's make sure we're on the right one. We have to get rid of our camera projection, and then we have to move our garage door. I think it got moved just a little bit to make sure we're not seeing through it. Cool. Okay. So let's move around back, make sure we have it all lined up. I think I moved it a little bit out of the way there. That's not what I wanted. Okay. Let's do that same process to all 3 of these. So that's 1. Let's go to our main wall. Let's select that polygon, the door, and we are going to, I think it's U, and then P for split. I'm going to split it. While we have it selected in our original, we're going to delete it. And we have our, why did that delete the whole thing? Let's try that again. Let me make sure this is working. We have our main wall. We have our polygon selected. Let's try this one just to make sure we're doing it right. We have our garage door, right, which is moving. Good. We have our main wall, which is everything except for that garage door. And we have to select just one polygon. And you know what? I think I selected too many. Let's just make sure we get only one. And we go U, boom. We go P for split, and it duplicates it down, and then we delete it. And it looks like we may be deleting more than we want. So let me see what's going on here. We have our original stuff. The only thing I'm imagining is that somewhere we deleted too much. Okay, so let's grab and try to brainstorm this a little bit. Let's grab what we know is our main wall. So that's everything except for this door. This main wall is all of this except for the door. And you can see the projection gets all weird if you start to move it because it's not sticking to it just like we had before. So that looks fine. And let's go ahead and grab just that polygon. And we're in model mode, which is where we want to be. We're in polygon mode, actually, is where we're going to grab this piece. And then let's try it one more time. That's our original, so let's duplicate that, or let's delete that. Let's go back to our main wall, which is moving fine. And we are going to hit U. We're going to hit P to split it. We're going to duplicate or delete it. And what it's doing is, I remember now what the problem is. So this is what was happening. So sorry, this is a little break here. We had a little stumble, but let me explain what happened, because this actually happened to me when I was learning this technique, and I want to show you what the difference is. And Chris showed me this actually. If we have this selected and we do what we did, which is U, P, and if I hit delete and my cursor is in the object dialog over here, it's going to delete the entire thing. Boom. And remember, that kept happening. That's not what we want. We just want this polygon deleted. And the only difference is where our cursor is. If our cursor is in this box, if it's in our view window and we hit delete, it does what we want it to. And that's the only difference. And I'm so glad I figured that out, because that was really bugging me. And this happened to me when I was trying this technique out. I kept having my cursor over here, and every time my cursor was over here, I'd hit delete, boom, and the whole thing would go. So if you ever run into that, your cursor, where it is, matters. I can't remember anything in Cinema that is like that. And it was really tricky to kind of wrap my head around. But if you're having issues with that, make sure your cursor is where you want it to. So it's in the right place. We're going to delete it. And I think we're back to actually getting some stuff done here. So let's grab our move tool and see what we got. So we have our garage door. So we have garage door 3, which is, if we name them in order. And we could just take this projector camera and add it into here. So we just are going to add it as a child to this door, which is great. And then this also needs the same tag. So let's just drag that tag in. And now when we move the garage door, it should move along with it. So we have to actually use this camera. So grab this tag, drag this new camera into it, which we could probably name these different too, just so they're not named identically. But if we just drag it in, it works fine. So now the door sticks to it. And we're back on track. We're through the problem, hopefully, and we're moving forward. So let's do it again. One last one. And man, this modeling stuff's tedious for me. All right, you guys, watch me struggle here. All right, so here we go. Boom. Select it, and we're gonna hit U. We're gonna hit P, and we're going to delete. Oh, see, my cursor was up there. We're gonna delete. And up here, we're going to name this. We have to make sure we're naming the right one. This is the... Okay, so that's the door, garage door 2, which is in the middle. We're going to steal that camera. Sorry, we're going to steal that camera. I'm just holding down Command as I drag. It's going to make a duplicate. I'm doing the same with the texture, and then I'm putting the new camera in there. And now, hopefully, we have door number 2. So, okay. So now we have 3 garage doors that we can open. Well, now we need rooms. If you look at the original render, these doors open and they reveal little rooms, little compartments behind here where the spheres are going to build up, where we're eventually going to add some emitters and have spheres build up and then roll out. So rather than try to get a cube and try to match it up and do all that stuff, let's grab this new geometry that we made. So let's grab all 3 garage doors. And I'm just going to duplicate them. So I'm going to Command-C, Command-V, and now I have 3 new garage doors that we're going to extrude to make our new rooms. So first thing we need is we don't need camera projections. We don't even need textures. These new rooms are going to have their own textures. But we can grab them all at once. Let's grab the polygon mode. And I think we could grab all 3 of these at once. and extrude them all at once so we have 3 equal kind of garage compartments. So there we go. Three doors, and we're going to extrude. So let's hit D for extrude. And in this case, we definitely want create caps to be off. And that is going to create a hole. It's going to have the front cut out, and then it's going to create the rest of the cube. So let's do the same thing we did before, which is add a 0 offset, hit enter, and then pull back those rooms as cubes. And now we have rooms. Okay, so we're getting close to being able to get the rest in here. Now we just need to test it. So let's grab a garage door. Let's grab one of these and open it up and reveal, boom, there's our garage door. The last thing we'll do before we start animating is make these garage doors a little thicker than just a plane. This is going to help with a few things. It's going to help with the dynamics. When our spheres are popping in there, you're not going to see any spheres like pop through the doors or anything. So let's go ahead and make these doors a little bit thick with almost the same technique. We're going to grab all 3 garage doors. We're going to grab the polygon mode and grab all 3 polygons, and we're going to extrude. So D for extrude, but in this case, we're going to create caps. We don't want to create a hole. We want to actually create a full cube, I guess, or a full 6-sided object here. So if we create caps, it'll keep the original cap and then extrude back. So now let's just go up and over and go offset 0, hit enter, and then just create a little bit of a door. See the thickness right there? It's just a little bit. So that's it. We have our doors. We have our sign. And we have a lot of tweaking to do, but all the basics are here. From here, we just have to get our spheres going. So why don't I stop talking about it and let's do it. Let's get our emitters. So the first thing we'll grab is simulate particles emitter. All right, and I keep going back to this camera, but I don't need to. I just want to, let's hit spacebar to go back to our normal mode here without being in a tool. And I want to bring this up, and I want to bring this back, and I want this emitter to emit particles just inside this cube. And what we're going to do is we're going to emit a ton of particles in a short amount of time. I'm just going to rotate this around. We're going to emit a ton of particles in a short amount of time, and then fill up this cube with spheres like in the first few seconds of the animation, before the doors even roll up. We're going to fill these dudes up, and then we're going to open the doors and allow them to roll down. So let's set that emitter there, and we need a sphere to fill it up. Right? So we put the sphere into the emitter as a child, and we tell the emitter to show objects. And like I said, we're gonna dump a ton of objects here all at once. So let's say it's 100 per second, or let's say it's 200 per second, 300 per second. Let's go crazy. We have 300 per second, but it's only gonna be for 1 second. Okay, so for 30 frames. It's going to dump 300 spheres into this cube. So let's set up the dynamics so that they don't just fly around. Because if we hit play now, it's just going to dump a bunch of spheres into the scene. Before we go any further as well, we want to make sure we're rendering instances. That'll speed up things quite a lot. And we can also turn our segments on our spheres down quite a lot. We don't need a ton of geometry because we're going to shrink them down too. And they're going to render perfect anyway. So let's grab the sphere and make them nice and small, maybe 5 centimeters or something. And let's rotate back around and grab the door. So where's our door? Our garage door 1. So let's order these so they make sense. We got garage door 1, 2, and 3. And if we turn off garage door 1, you can see now we're emitting some spheres into the cube. They're looking all right, but they're a little small. Let's make them a little larger. Something like that might work. Okay, so now we need to add the dynamics. So, of course, the sphere needs dynamics. We need a simulation tag, rigid body, the cubes for all of the garage doors, which are now just the garages, right? These all need dynamics. So let's grab all 3 of these and go tags, simulation tags, collider body. All right. Of course, if we hit play now, they're going to blow out of there. And that's because our collider bodies by default are, let's go to collision, by automatic shape. Now, an automatic shape is like taking like a saran wrap or a Ziploc bag or something and putting your object into it. It's not allowing for any concave kind of objects like this. And because we have this kind of hole, we need to tell this object that isn't looking at it with the hole in it by default that, dude, you need to look at the whole thing. You need a static mesh. And now when we go back and we hit play, now our spheres are going to fly out. All right? Now, our spheres are flying out of here, but of course they're not flying out. They're not rolling and hitting the ground and interacting with our new geometry. So we need a dynamic tag for that as well. Let's go to our main wall, which is our main geometry here, and go to tags. Let's go to simulation tags, collider body, and now we're stuck with the same thing. The collider body thinks it's like a compound kind of round shape. We need, again, to go in and tell it that it is a static mesh. And now it should allow it to kind of fall out and roll all over the floor. It's rolling over here. It's interacting, and we're getting closer. So there's our spheres. We need 3 sets of this. So let's set up our emitter in three tubes there. So we have 1, and we have 2, and we have 3. Okay, and now when we turn our garage door back on and we add dynamics to our garage doors, let's grab all 3 of those doors, and let's say same thing. Let's go to simulation, collider body. We also can leave this on automatic this time. This should work. So what should happen now is that a ton of particles are being born in 30 frames, and they're just in there, right? You can see our timeline really slowed down. It's calculating dynamics. It's doing the whole thing, but nothing is spilling out because the garage doors are closed, and we basically just have a bunch of spheres in here waiting to fall out. So if we open this garage door, if we open this garage door here, I think we might be on polygon mode. See how I grabbed the polygon and not the entire object? We have to go back to object and then raise our door. There we go. And then now our stuff will spill out. Okay? So it's all happening, and this is happening in 3 different garages, right? So from here, we have to animate our garage door. So up until frame, let's say 30, and we could speed this up even more. So if we go to our emitter, and we say, okay, instead of 300 particles per second, I want 600 particles per second, but I only want it to happen for 15 frames. Well, then we get the same amount of particles just faster. So they really spit out of there, and by frame 20, they're waiting. They're waiting to come out. So let's start animating our garage door on frame 20. Let's grab garage door 1, and we're only going to animate the position of the X, or the Y, I'm sorry. So we're going to, at frame 20, set a keyframe for Y by holding down Command and clicking the Y keyframe dot right there. We're going to move forward a few frames, and we're going to raise our garage door. Let's say it's, I don't know, halfway up, or let's go really high with this one. And then we click the dot again, and here we go. Garage door opens. Okay, so now it's filling up with spheres, and the garage door opens, and the spheres come piling out. Wonderful. Okay, so that we're good. We're ready to go. We just have to do this for the other 2 doors. Let's stagger them. Let's say the second door opens at frame 30, and again, we're going to set a Y keyframe. We're going to go forward a little bit. We're going to move it up, maybe not as high, and we'll set a keyframe. Same for garage door 3. Let's go to here and set a Y and move forward and move it up. Boom. You know, I'm offsetting them to try to make them look a little bit, not like they're all together. Maybe one goes up all the way. I don't know. But, design it the way you want. And now we should have, let's get this sphere, this big guy out of the way. We are mainly using this guy just to light stuff. So let's turn him off. So now we have all 3 doors rolling up and spheres piling out. Okay, cool. So let's extend our timeline a little bit. Let's go to 200 frames or something like that, just so we could see it go on a little bit further. It doesn't just get cut off. And then we have to texture our spheres, right? We have 3 different colors. We need to create a new material. And let's do one, and then we'll duplicate it because we want them to have similar properties. Let's duplicate it and have them go through. So in my case, I had a white and an orange and a black. Because, you know, what other colors do you need, really, other than blue? And a little bit of orange and some black. So we have our color, and we have our white turned up. We have our reflection. Let's go add reflection. You know the drill. We add some Fresnel, tone it down a little bit, and hit render and see what that looks like. So it's picking up the detail from our scene. We can make it a little bit more shiny just to make sure it's all working. It's picking up the sky. It's picking up all that blue. Remember, these are white, but because it's in all this sky object stuff, it's really, really blue because it's being lit by the same stuff as the rest of it. So that looks okay. I like these really, really glossy. I want to catch the reflection in that sky there. And so that looks pretty shiny. And let's call that. So that's one. And I'm also going to just turn off the specular. We don't need that. Let's make duplicate copies. This one's going to be black, but of course not all the way black, but pretty dark. The next one will be orange, and this is we're just going to pick a nice kind of reddy orange there, and we'll apply the orange one there. And the black one, let's just apply directly to it. And let's hit render, see what goes. Okay, so here it goes. We got our orange, we got our white, and we got our black. Okay, so this looks a little dark. One thing we could do is go to our HDR rig and just turn up the brightness on the rig, and that's just going to give us a little bit of boost in our brightness when that GI hits. It's just kind of throwing more GI at it. You don't want to go too much because these white spheres are going to kind of turn too white. If we throw too much light at it, you're going to see they're going to keep going white, and they're eventually just going to look too bright, right? And you can see it also affects reflection. And that's if you ever have this issue where you need a light to go brighter and brighter and brighter, but now the reflection's crazy, well, you could go fix your reflections in here, or you can actually just dial it in the rig, and that's why I added this reflective brightness. You can just tone this down, and now you have reflections, not so much, now you have reflections being calculated separately from the luminance, right? So there you go. Okay, so let's tone this back down. Let's keep our reflection going on, and see if we can get a good balance where we get some nice oranges, and we got whites, we got blacks. It's all looking close, right? But we still have some stuff to do. One thing, I was looking at this, I'm like, it's a little flat, and I go, what if we added lights inside each little garage door had its own little set of lights? Wouldn't that be cool? So then I just put a light in there, and it actually helped out a lot. It got some nice little reflections in each one of these, and it just kind of added another layer of depth to the scene. So of course I grabbed one of my softboxes here and just put it right in the ceiling, and it ended up looking pretty cool. So let's just grab an overhead softbox, since it's just already angled there. It's already just floating in the sky. If we go back to our objects and we go make sure we're off cameras, I think we're good. We'll just float up, rotate around, and we'll take the softbox and scale it all back down. So first thing we need to do is take our overall scale, turn it down, and then bring it down and try to line this softbox up so it's kind of hanging out in the top of our cube. All right, so we go down, and we'll make sure it's inside the cube there. We'll move it over and back, and this is where we may need to use another viewport just to line it up. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit so it's not cutting off, and I'm just going to line it up in there. I'm going to check the front as well. So if we go to front and we zoom in, we can see it's actually just kind of right down in there, and now we can just move it over. So, it's not allowing me to rotate because I'm in the front view. We can see I'm all lined up, except I'm kind of sticking out a little bit. So let's just back that up, and maybe we'll scale down a little bit, and I think we got it. So let's go back to our main camera, and we'll go to our projector camera just to see what it looks like come from out front. And we have the light inside of our scene ready to go. It's hidden. It's not, all the geometry is gone, but we have this nice little fall off, some nice little detail light. We have some new reflections. And now all we have to do is just duplicate it and move it to all 3 scenes, or all 3 garage doors. So if we go to our top again, we could take this, and there's 1, and let's go find it, and we could just duplicate it, move it over. There's 2, and again, duplicate it, move it over, and we have 3. And now if we want to change these settings or turn them up and down or whatever, we could do that globally just by grabbing them all, and they're all next to each other, they're all lined up. So now we have, let's see, now we have some lights. You can see it's actually a cool effect because you don't see it until the spheres kind of roll out more, until they empty a little bit. And then as soon as there's room, oh, I stopped it too early. Let me extend our timeline again. All right, here come our garage doors. Let's just hurry this up. There we go. So they're all going to spill out. And if we wait until they've fallen a little bit more and we hit render, we're going to check out and see what this light looks like. And then we could adjust accordingly. So that looks pretty good. The orange door is still a lot shorter than the other one, so we're going to see that a little bit later. We could always tweak that too. But now I'm noticing a new little problem we need to tweak. So let's go zoom in. Let me show you what I'm seeing here. All right, zoom around. I'm going to zoom in. And here is our spheres. I'm going to hit render. And check it out. We got floating spheres. They're not touching the ground. And you can see the global illumination shadows, or probably more likely the ambient occlusion shadows, are under there, but they're not. We could see right through them. I mean, these are supposed to be on the ground, and if you had a smaller scale, it would be even more apparent that these are floating. And if you ever get this, you have to change your overall dynamic settings. And where you get that is if you hit Command D, you're going to get your project settings. And if you go into dynamics, then here you can change your some of your settings in here. So where am I? There's nothing but phones ringing over here, so I'm going crazy. Here's what we do. We go to dynamics. We go to general, and no, it's not general. It's expert maybe. Collision margin. Wonderful. So if we turn this up, and I hit play, you're going to see it's even higher, right? This collision margin is what's controlling this. Is what's controlling this height. So if we grab it and we just knock it down, and we can't go to 0, but we can knock it pretty far down, and depending on the scale of your scene, you may want to tweak that setting just a little bit. So I think we're okay. Let's zoom back out and make sure nothing's floating, and that looks a lot better. Now we're not going to be this close up on them, so let's get out of normal scale where it's not so obvious, and make sure we're all set. Boom. Okay. What do we do from here? That's really shiny, isn't it? Maybe we could tweak that. So we're still in the tweak mode. We still got little phases to kind of play with. But one thing that's standing out to me now is that sign is just kind of placed in there. If you watched part 1, the mo text was just kind of thrown in there. What we really need are some caps. So let's add some caps to these the mo text. Let's add some steps there, and just a little bit of radius. And what I'm trying to do is make it look a little bit more realistic on that sign there. So let me grab an interactive render region just so we could focus in on just the sign and see what that looks like as we start to make some changes. So one thing is now we have a rounded off sign, which is going to catch some more reflections, which is nice. If I grab that texture, I can try to grab a little bit more edge reflection to get some lights. And the other thing I could do is actually use specular in this case to drive a couple little hits on the edge. So let's zoom in and talk about how we can use specular to our advantage. Not to, well, I guess it is to fake reflections, but not to go along with existing reflections, but to add new little hits. What I really wanted was just to see a lot of little detail in this sign. And what I think I ended up doing was adding a light, just a regular old light, turn off any light diffusion and any GI illumination. I don't want it to light GI. I just want it to affect the specular of that material. So now if we go into that material and we kind of crank up the specular a little bit, you're going to see this light is starting to add a nice little highlight to these edges. See that right there? It just popped on. So let me turn this off, and you can see without it, really flat, really flat type. And with it, we're starting to see those little edges pop up. Oh, there you go. With it, see how that little detail popped up in there? So this, I hope, is going to help sell that sign to make it a little bit more realistic, to add a little bit more shine and detail. And if I put the light in a place that makes more sense, like maybe kind of up in the sky, then we're going to get, nice reflections up top. And if we sharpen up our specular to make it a little bit tighter, then we're just going to get those nice little edge hits without worrying about the rest of it. Boom. Sweet. All right. So let's zoom out and see what else we need to do here. Let's go back to our projection camera and do a rough little render here and see where we are, what it looks like, and where our background is still on. So let's go to our HDR rig and turn that off, seen by camera. Now that we have it all lined up and our reflections are looking okay, those reflections are so bright. Again, we could dial it down on the texture, or we could just affect it in the sky itself and just kind of pull it back right there. And that's kind of an easy slider to dial in. Maybe it looks a little bright as well, so let's pull it back. You want it to match up. Okay, that looks pretty close. Now, one thing I know I changed in when I kind of first tried this out was the dynamic settings of the spheres, and specifically I guess not just the spheres, but also everything it came in contact with. By default, and I've been doing this more and more, by default, the friction settings on all this stuff seems to be really low. In other words, these spheres kind of hit and they start rolling and they fly around, and they're really slippery by default, and especially on cement, and especially with all this stuff going on, I wanted it to look a little bit more sticky, and more and more in the studio in general, we've been going in and grabbing the tags and adding a ton more friction to everything. It just seems that the defaults are a little low. So if you ever get kind of sloppy or slippery looking frictionless, ice skatey kind of dynamics, going in and changing your friction might be a good way to kind of a good place to start. So I'm going to grab all three sphere tags, go into friction, and just crank it like 150 or 200 or something like that. I'm going to do the same thing to the main texture for this wall here. There it is, main wall, and I'm going to go, 150. Let's do the same thing. So now what it's going to do is when these spheres fall, they're not just going to like hit the ground and roll around. They're stuck a little bit more. They have more friction, It's magic school bus stuff. Like, it's going to hit the ground and they're going to stay there. They're still round and they still roll, but they're not hitting the ground and flying off into nowhere. They need a lot of kind of push and momentum to kind of overcome that friction on the ground, and they come to a rest quickly as well. So to me, this looked a little bit more realistic. And again, this is something I've been doing a lot with dynamics lately, is really tweaking the friction, especially if you're trying to make something realistic. If you want your letters and your motion graphics to kind of fly around and bounce around, maybe the defaults are good where they are. But if you ever want it to kind of hit the ground and stick, I was playing around with dice earlier, like dice hitting a table, like a felt table, and they just were sliding around. It was like an ice rink in there. And as soon as I added some friction, the dice acted more naturally. They bounced better. They'd hit the ground and they'd rotate better. Everything kind of dialed in once I started adding some more friction. So Always play around with that. So I think we're okay. You know, I added a really simple camera move, you know, you could just add a camera. And actually, what you want to do is maybe even just duplicate your projector camera, and then turn off the projector tag, of course, and then turn off the interactive render region. Maybe we just set up a real simple camera. So maybe it starts, you know, let's zoom in. We got plenty of kind of res. We got plenty of geometry to work with. So we could kind of start here, and I don't know, just, you know, pick a hit record all keyframes, and do the lazy man's camera move here, and then we'll rotate over, maybe zoom in again, and then this is going to be our secondary camera, and we hit record again, and now we have a real subtle little move just to show off our parallax. It's not the most insightful camera move ever made, but that's kind of how I built mine. Real simple, and the spheres come flying out, and we render this thing, and let's see how it looks. We have our ambient occlusion doing some work on the sign. We have our global illumination, adding the colors and the correct reflections and all this stuff to our spheres. And it's a little dark here, but I think we can fix that up in compositing as well. As long as these blacks match these blacks, and the tone of the blue looks fine, and the whites match the white, you know, the right tones, we could always recolor correct all this later, as long as it matches. As long as it matches in 3D. So in other words, even if it looks wrong, if it's all wrong at the same time, like this bluish tone that maybe we want to get rid of, it's fine. Just make sure it matches, and we can color correct this later. Instead of tweaking each little detail in here, let's get it all out at one thing in the wrong kind of color balance, pull it into like After Effects or Photoshop, and then tweak it there. So I think we're good. From here, I just rendered out all the frames, you know, I set it up HD and saved it out in 16-bit TIFFs, and then I brought it into After Effects. So let's do the last little bit here where I want to just show you the final composite. And you know, I didn't get to the mirror. The mirror was kind of a silly idea. I thought it'd be kind of nice to see all these spheres falling from another angle. You know, and maybe sell it a little bit on the realism with the reflections. I don't know. If you want to make this thing, it's just a squished sphere that has 100% chrome, you know, 100% reflection on it. And I put a little edge around it, just a little black torus that I scaled way back down. And I just squished the sphere. I just took the sphere and I made it editable. I'm describing it, and I could literally show you here in moments. And now I need to go to the right version. And I opened up a new scene, and I took a sphere, and I added a bunch of geometry to it. I hit C to make it editable, and I grabbed the scale tool, and I just squished it. So I made this little mirror, right? So it's got this little dome thing going on. And then I took a torus, and I set it on Z-axis, and I shrank it way down, and I made just a little rim. Just a little rim around it. And I made this black. So I made this dude chrome, and I made the torus black. Both a little bit reflective, and you guys get it. You guys know where this is going. So we got the black one with a little reflection, which I didn't add, and this guy is basically a mirror, right? So of course in here where there's nothing to reflect, it just looks like two black objects. But as soon as we bring this into our scene, then we could bring it in. You can see it comes in 0, 0, 0, just like we had it before. And now we can rotate it in, kind of aim it down, make it look like one of those like backup mirrors, you know, so the trucks don't hit the dang wall or whatever. So it's way oversized. But when we hit render, hopefully it will show up. So there you go. Real quick and easy little reflecto mirror. And all these reflections and this mirror and all this stuff, before we leave cinema and finally get back to After Effects, really had me cranking the anti-aliasing settings. I had some really high ones for my render. In fact, best 1x1 4x4 wasn't enough. I eventually had to go 2x2 and I think 8x8, and it really did slow down. I think I even changed the threshold a little bit. It really did slow down the render, but it demanded it because of all these reflections and the double reflections in the mirror. So as soon as you have reflections on top of reflections, you need to really turn up some of your settings there. Okay, so I rendered it out. We got it in After Effects, and let me just show you quickly all the different layers in After Effects that are kind of the final color correction and all that stuff. So here's the original render. You can see it's still really blue. You know, all the spheres are got this blue tint to them. We got the light inside the garages, and we got all this stuff. But there's none of that color correction. So in After Effects is where this all happens. So first of all, before we move up, let's just go up the stack from bottom to top, and I'll show you everything that's on it. First of all, there is Real Smart Motion Blur. So Real Smart Motion Blur added some blur to our spheres. So as they came pouring out, they added a little bit of, motion blur, which will happen if you have all this movement, right? So above that, this layer looks off. Looks like that wasn't used. Above that, we have, let's turn that on. There is a LF glow, Light Factory glow, with just a little bit of haze here. It's just a little bit of like blue sky haze I added up in the sky. If we solo that, you can see it's just a little blue hint there. The next one is, let's see what the next one is. The next one is a sun. So this is a lens flare. This is the Light Factory, the Knoll Light Factory. I think it's Knoll 3. It's the new one out, and decided to try it out on this project, and it looks pretty good. So what it is it's a sun flare that I animated on slowly over time. So the idea is, let's go back. Let's just go to half res so we can watch this quickly. There's a lot of stuff going on with the Real Smart and all this. So if I back up, you can see it's kind of off right now, and if we look up in this corner, as the camera kind of peers out from the cave and kind of into the sun, the idea was that finally the camera kind of starts to see the sun, and we get this nice little glow, and it just adds a little bit of excitement, and it added a lot of warmth that the scene, to me, really needed a lot more warmth because of all this blue, right? If we contrast between the original flat blue and this nice sunny day here, it's a lot more appealing to my eye anyway. Above that, so let's just turn off everything above that. So that is just the glow and the blue haze. There it is. Above that, we have a little bit of a vignette just to kind of crop in our corners and to keep the focus where it should be. Above that, we have our curves. Now, the curves is doing a lot of the heavy-duty lifting on our color balancing. So if we go to our blue channel, you can see I pulled quite a lot of blue out of the midtones to keep it, because remember, it was really blue like this. I'm exaggerating, but by pulling out some of those midtones, I'm pulling it back to what would be a more normal color balance. And especially with the sun in there, it actually balances quite well. I didn't have to do a ton of it. I don't need to make this white. I just need to balance it out and give you a hint of the rest of the color spectrum and show you the full spectrum, right? You have the sun, because everything together makes white. And so the sun is I'm sure there's some scientists that'll yell at me for this, but the sun is red because all the blue got sucked out by the sky, right? And then the sky comes down and fills in the rest, and that's kind of half technically the process of where we eventually see white. But if we look at any specific shadow, it might be more blue because it's not getting the sun, and if we look directly at the sun, it's going to be more warm because all of that blue is kind of being pulled out from the atmosphere. To me, that's how I understand it. I'm sure I'm way screwing that up, but that's the way I like to think about it when I see a scene like this, is how do things balance out design-wise? Is there enough to balance out between the warmth and the coolness? To me, adding that sun helped so much. I didn't have to color correct as much as I thought I would. So hopefully that's helpful. The science is not sound, I'm sure, but that's the way I like to think about it. Last is some grain. I added a little bit of grain just to kind of fill in. There's a lot of grain in this original iPhone photo, And if you take a photo with a lot of grain and add all these nice shiny objects on top of it, it will look fake. It will look 3D, and it will look, you know, of course, a bunch of spheres falling out is not the most realistic thing anyway. But if you want to add more realism, a good way to do that is to mash the whole thing on top with grain, because now your eye thinks it's all shot with the same piece of film, and you're used to film grain with a lot of movies and all this stuff. So by adding even just a little film grain and adding it back into the scene on top of everything, kind of mushes it all back together. That's why things like these flares and these little subtle glows go a long way into helping the compositing, because you're putting the fake stuff and the old real stuff together in the same light, with the same grain, with the same things that go on top of it, and it's slowly fooling our brain, hopefully, into imagining that this is all in the same scene. So here we are again. Let's go look at the original, and then here's the final composite, color corrected, animated, vignetted, and rendered out. So that is it. Holy moly, that was if you followed both parts, thank you, man. I hope you didn't have to pee in the middle there. But thank you guys for watching. Hopefully we'll have some more R14 stuff coming out. We want to jump into a lot of the new features and play around with them. You know, stuff like the aerodynamics is really exciting. I know we got that planned. And it may be out. By the time you watch this, heck, it may be out already. But anyway, thank you for watching another tutorial. We'll be back with more tutorials soon. And keep having fun, keep rendering, and make it shiny. Bye, guys.